I'm writing this because I don't know what else to do. My friends think I'm being dramatic. My coworkers brush it off as stress, and my family. Well, I stopped trying to explain things to them. But I know what I heard, and I know what I keep hearing, even when nobody else seems to notice it. It started in the most ordinary way possible, which I guess is why it's so hard to convince anyone. There was no old haunted house, no cursed object, no whispered legend about the woods nearby. There was just me, working late nights from home with my headset and microphone. I do a lot of online meetings for work. Our company moved remote permanently after the pandemic, and I've been using the same USB mic and noise-canceling headset for nearly 3 years now. I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghost stories or paranormal crap. I'm 34, too logical for that. But logic doesn't explain what I'm about to tell you. It began during a late-night conference call. It was around 1:20 a.m., and I was the only one from my department still logged on. My manager had signed off, and the last two people had just left the Zoom room. I was tired, but wanted to wrap up my notes before heading to bed. My mic was muted, and I had turned the webcam off. I was just sitting there, typing quietly. That's when I heard it. Through the headset, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of breathing. It wasn't my own. At first, I thought maybe I had accidentally unmuted, or there was an open mic from someone who hadn't left the call. I glanced at the participant list, empty. Just me. No one else in the meeting room. I sat frozen, listening. It was slow, steady breathing. Inhale, exhale, almost rhythmic. It sounded close, intimate, as if someone were just a few inches away from the microphone. I pulled my headset off immediately, thinking maybe it was some weird electronic feedback. But when I put the headset back on, it was still there. That soft, deliberate inhale. Then the long exhale. I quickly disconnected the call, shut down the program, and yanked the USB out of the port. My heart was pounding harder than it should have been for something so stupid. It was probably just interference, I told myself. Some kind of weird audio glitch. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I convinced myself it had just been fatigue. My sleep schedule was wrecked. I'd been drinking too much coffee, working too many nights. Maybe I had imagined it. That illusion didn't last long. 2 nights later, during another meeting, it happened again. This time, other people were still in the room. We were discussing project deadlines when I noticed a faint hiss of static under everyone's voices. It was subtle, like when you're tuned between radio stations. Then I caught it again, the breathing. Slow, patient. No one else seemed to hear it. I leaned closer to the mic icon, checking who was unmuted. Everyone else's mic showed the usual flicker of sound when they talked, but even when nobody was speaking, the static stayed. The breathing continued. I interrupted, trying to make light of it. Hey, does anyone else hear that? Like a weird noise. Nobody responded at first, until one of the interns laughed and said, "You mean your mic? You sound fine, dude." But I wasn't talking about my mic. I was muted. Seriously, I pressed. There's, like, breathing. Another awkward pause. Then my manager chimed in, probably just interference. Happens all the time. But the thing is, I wasn't the one transmitting it. My mic was muted, and the breathing was too distinct, too human. I didn't argue, but I kept the headset on, hyper-aware of every sound. The longer I listened, the more I noticed something strange. The breathing wasn't consistent. Sometimes it would pause, like the person or whatever it was holding its breath. Other times, the inhale would come faster, almost shaky, as though it were excited. By the time the call ended, I was drenched in sweat. For a few days, nothing happened. I started to relax, thinking maybe it had been a short-lived glitch. Then, on a Saturday night, I decided to play games online with a few friends. Same headset, same mic. We were laughing, yelling, trash-talking each other like always. Then the channel went quiet while we waited for the next match to load. That's when it happened again. The breathing returned, but this time it wasn't alone. Mixed in with the hiss of static, just under the sound of my friend's chatter, came a low whisper. I couldn't make out words at first. It was like the sound you hear when someone is trying to speak, but is just below the edge of clarity. But the cadence was wrong. It wasn't background noise. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. I yanked my mic out, panicking. My friends immediately shouted through the speakers. "Dude, what the hell? You still there? Lagging out again?" I didn't answer right away. My hand was shaking. I slowly typed into the chat instead. "Did you guys hear that? The whispering?" They all answered with some version of no. That was the first time I realized I might be the only one who could hear it. By this point, I was obsessed. Every time I logged onto a meeting, I would record the session using screen capture software. I wanted proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. For almost a week, I caught nothing. Just normal chatter, normal audio. Then, on Thursday at 2:37 a.m., during a late-night work call, I finally captured it. The recording starts normal, 3 of us discussing numbers. Then, right around the 15-minute mark, the breathing starts. Quiet first, then louder. At 16:12, the whispering begins. I listened to that section at least 20 times. And by the 20th, I could hear it clearly. "You left it open." The words were rasped, broken by the sound of breath scraping across dry throat. I'm inside. I slammed my laptop shut so hard I thought I'd crack the screen. I didn't care. I didn't sleep at all that night. Because here's the thing, I had left something open. My closet door. And when I finally worked up the courage to look, standing there in the dark of my bedroom, the door was no longer open. It was shut. But I hadn't shut it. I didn't sleep that night. Or if I did, it was in broken, jittery intervals where every shadow in the room looked like it was moving. When the sun finally pushed itself over the rooftops, painting the ceiling of my room in pale orange, I felt both relieved and exhausted. The first thing I did was open my laptop. I told myself I was going to check emails, maybe browse for a new job listing, but instead, I pulled up Zoom. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought I'd imagined everything from the night before, that fatigue had tricked me into hearing something that wasn't there. But as soon as I pulled up the meeting log, my stomach dropped. There it was, a session recorded at 2:14 a.m. I hadn't started that recording. I hadn't even been awake at that point. At least not until after. My hand hovered over the trackpad for a long time before I clicked it. The video opened. The first thing I noticed was the faint glow of my desk lamp, even though I'd turned it off before crawling into bed. The webcam was angled slightly too high, pointing at the corner of the ceiling rather than my chair. And then came the sound. That same breathing, slow, guttural, deliberate. It rose and fell with unnatural regularity, louder than before, and under it was another sound, faint but undeniable, a scraping, like something dragged across the floor. "Hello." My own voice came through the speakers, distorted by nerves. My throat tightened as I listened to myself replay the exact moment from the night before, except from an angle I couldn't have seen, me blurry in the background, standing halfway between my bed and the desk, staring at the computer as if hypnotized. But here's what shattered me, what I swear I didn't see while it was happening. In the corner of the video frame, by the edge of the desk, something leaned into view for a fraction of a second. A shape, just enough of it to register the curve of a cheek, the glint of teeth that weren't smiling. And then it pulled back into the shadows. I slammed the laptop shut. For the next several hours, I walked around the apartment in tight, nervous circles, unable to shake the sound of that breath, that scraping from my head. My kitchen felt smaller. The hallway seemed longer. Even opening the refrigerator door filled me with panic, as though something might be waiting inside. By noon, I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I called my friend Erica. She was the only person I could think of who'd actually listen without writing me off as paranoid. Erica and I had worked together at a design firm 2 years ago. Since then, she'd moved into freelance digital forensics, helping people recover files, sometimes even tracing hacked data. If anyone could figure out whether what I saw was some glitch, it'd be her. I didn't tell her everything at first, just that my laptop had recorded something I hadn't initiated, that the mic and camera had turned on while the system was asleep. That's not normal, she said immediately. Could be malware. Send me the file. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to share it with anyone. Like acknowledging it out loud would give it more weight than it already had. But I uploaded it to a drive and sent her the link that night. While waiting for Erica to review the file, I tried to act normal. Ordered takeout, watched mindless TV, kept all the lights on. At around 11:30, she texted me. This isn't right. The audio track isn't just mic input. There are multiple channels layered into it. Some of it's ambient noise that doesn't belong to your room. I called her immediately. What do you mean? I asked, trying not to let my voice shake. I mean, it's like someone spliced in another feed. Not hacked, it's raw. Embedded. Like your computer didn't just record the room. It recorded something else on top of it. My pulse hammered in my ears. Like what? She paused before answering. I don't know, but there's something in the spectrogram. I isolated it. Listen. And then she played it for me. It was the breathing, but not just breathing anymore. Slowed down, I could hear the faint cadence of words. Not English, not anything I could recognize, but rhythmic like chanting. And beneath that, another sound so faint I might have missed it if she hadn't pointed it out. Whispering. Except the whispering wasn't directed into the mic. It was directed at me. You. The hairs on my neck stood up. Erica didn't say anything for a moment. Then, you didn't edit this? Of course I didn't. Why would I? Okay, she interrupted. Then I don't know what the hell this is. But it's not fake. That night I left the laptop shut. I shoved it under a pile of blankets, like that would somehow keep it from turning on again. But I still couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined the frame of that recording, the faint glow of the lamp, my own shadow frozen in the background, and that split-second glimpse of something else. Something that leaned in as if it wanted to be seen. At around 3 a.m., I heard it again. Not from the computer this time. From the wall behind my bed. Breathing. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone pressing their mouth against the drywall, dragging each inhale and exhale through the plaster. I froze, my body locked up, every muscle straining to listen. And then came the whisper. This time it was clear, closer. I didn't sleep at all after that. By dawn, I'd already packed a bag. Clothes, toothbrush, charger. I didn't care about anything else. I told myself I'd stay at Erica's for a few days, at least until I figured this out. But when I grabbed my keys and opened the front door, there was an envelope lying on the doormat. No address, no stamp, just my name written in blocky, uneven handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It said, "We heard you." I've spent more time listening to recordings of myself than I ever have in my life. Every clip I play back feels heavier, like each word is burdened with something unspoken beneath it. My own voice sounds strange now, as if I'm not hearing myself at all. Sometimes it feels delayed, like I speak in real time, but the recording lags, coughing up echoes and static distortions that make me question whether I actually said what I remember saying. The breathing is still there. Even when I'm not on a call, even when the mic is turned off, I've caught faint traces of it in the background hum of my recordings. It doesn't follow normal rhythm. It'll slow to nothing for long stretches, then come back in quick, wet gasps like something had been drowning and clawed its way to air. I told myself it was feedback, maybe noise pollution picked up from outside my apartment. But then I muted the mic entirely and tested it in silence. I sat there for 10 minutes with headphones on, holding my breath, listening. The sound was still there. Shallow, dragging, moist breaths like lips sticking together between each exhale. I pressed my palm against my chest to reassure myself my own breathing wasn't syncing with what I heard. It wasn't. What's worse is that the pattern sometimes reacts. I coughed once, harsh, loud, cutting the silence, and for 2 seconds, the thing in my headphones stopped breathing. Dead silence. Then it exhaled in a way that sounded too deliberate, like it had been holding back until I was done. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just picking up noise. I was listening to something that was listening to me. As I kept trying to confide in people online, thinking someone must have experienced this, I typed out a post on a tech forum. Is it possible to pick up phantom breathing on a muted mic? Responses trickled in. Probably just interference. Do a clean reinstall of your drivers. Cheap headset. Replace it and you'll be fine. Bro, it's just your own breath looping back. But one response was different. The user's name was just Hollow Channel. Their reply said, "You're not supposed to hear it. If you've heard it more than once, don't acknowledge it out loud. It notices when you do." That was it. No explanation, no follow-up, no profile history. The account didn't exist a day later when I went back to check. The words didn't make sense at first, but they stuck with me. It notices when you do. That night, I tested it again. I turned off the mic, muted everything, then whispered into the void, "Are you listening?" The breathing stopped instantly. Silence stretched so long, I thought maybe I'd imagined everything. But then, so close to my ear, I swore I felt air on my skin through the headset. I heard a single word stretched out and damp like vocal cords trying to shape sound after being disused too long. Yes. I ripped the headphones off so hard they snapped against the desk. Things aren't just staying in the headphones anymore. Last week, during a work meeting, I muted myself while someone else gave a presentation. My coworkers suddenly froze, their eyes widening. One woman leaned closer to her screen and asked, "Who's on?" "Who's?" Breathing like that. The call grew tense. Everyone assumed someone hadn't muted. I knew my mic was off. I could see the red slash through the icon. Yet in my speakers, I heard it deep, drawn-out inhalations that overlapped with the presenter's voice. Someone joked nervously, "Feels like a horror movie," and a couple people laughed, but the mood shifted. When the meeting ended, I stayed behind, staring at my reflection in the blank black square where my webcam feed should have been. I didn't dare turn the camera on. That night I noticed something unsettling. When I closed the laptop and set it aside, I still heard it. Not from the speakers, from the room itself. Soft, deliberate breathing tucked into the silence of my apartment. It happened 2 nights ago. I woke at 3:12 a.m., unsure why. My laptop was shut, but its indicator light pulsed faintly like it was half asleep. I hadn't touched it in hours. From a desk across the room came the faint crackle of my headset turning on. Then I heard it, clear, open, unfiltered. Breathing. Not in my ears this time, but spilling into the room like someone was standing just beside the desk, exhaling into the mic. I stayed in bed, paralyzed. The breaths grew louder, then stopped. In the silence that followed, I swear I heard the creak of weight shifting, like someone crouching down, listening. I couldn't stop myself. My voice broke into the dark. "Who's there?" For the first time since it began, it answered without hesitation. But it didn't come from the headset. It came from the dark corner of my room. Listening. I haven't been sleeping since then. Every time I close my eyes, I hear phantom audio clips in my head, distorted replays of my own voice, twisted and warped, overlapping with that wet, dragging breath. I unplugged the headset, threw it in the trash, even shut down the laptop entirely. But yesterday, while passing by the fridge, I swore I heard it faintly echoing from inside, like condensation hissing against plastic. A breath. Long, patient. Waiting. I woke up to the sound of my computer. Not the fan. Not the hum of the power supply. It was the unmistakable click of a microphone icon being turned on. A tiny mechanical pop. I didn't touch it. I hadn't touched anything. The clock on my desk said 3:07 a.m. I swear I had turned my PC off before bed. But now the monitor glowed faint blue, a faint cursor blinking on my desktop. The mic indicator light was red. The sound came immediately. That same shallow, deliberate breathing. Not fast, not panic-controlled. Almost practiced. The sound was too close, too wet. I sat frozen, every muscle in my body pulled taut like wire. I had headphones hanging on the edge of the desk, but I wasn't wearing them. The sound was coming from my external speakers. And then, "You're still here." The voice was distorted, muffled as though pressing against the inside of the microphone. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't imagined. It had cadence, weight, tone. I lunged across the desk, ripping the power cord straight from the socket. The screen snapped black. The breathing cut. I stood there in the dark, heart hammering so violently I thought I'd throw up. My reflection glared back from the black mirror of the monitor, eyes wide, jaw slack. I waited. For a minute. For 10. For 30. Nothing. Eventually, shaking, I crawled back into bed. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I avoided my office like it carried infection. My computer sat dead, unplugged, but I couldn't even glance at it without my stomach knotting. I worked from the kitchen table, laptop propped open, phone close at hand. Every ping, every notification startled me like a gunshot. But the worst part came when I logged back into Zoom. Several of my coworkers had already joined. They looked tired, unfocused, but no one said anything about the night before. No one asked about the breathing, the voice. Finally, during a pause, I unmuted. "Did anyone else hear, something last night?" On the call. Silence. Just faint keystrokes. Then one coworker, Anna, glanced up with the kind of expression you give someone about to derail a meeting. "Hear what?" I stopped. My throat felt dry, constricted. "Nothing. Never mind." But she stared at me longer than necessary. Not suspicious, more like recognition. That night, determined not to sink into paranoia, I forced myself back into my office. I kept the lights on, blinds open, the PC unplugged. I tried to reassure myself. This is nothing but stress, audio artifacts, a tired brain inventing patterns. At 1:12 a.m., my phone rang. Zoom audio. Incoming call. That shouldn't happen. Zoom doesn't call your phone in the middle of the night unless a meeting is scheduled, and none was. Hands trembling, I declined the call. The ringtone died. My phone buzzed again instantly. Same thing. Zoom audio incoming call. I declined. Again, again, again. Each time the call returned, faster, more insistent, as though the system itself were hammering its way through refusal. On the eighth call, I answered. Silence. No, not silence. Breathing. Slow, steady, patient. Then, so close to the microphone that the distortion clipped, "Why did you hang up?" I screamed and threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. The call ended. But here's the part that made me want to crawl out of my own skin. When I crept over and picked up the phone, the recent calls list showed nothing. No history. No evidence that anything had rung at all. I messaged Anna the next morning. I needed answers. I needed someone to admit they heard what I heard. Me? Can we talk? Something's been going on with Zoom. Something weird. Anna, not here. Meet me. After work. Coffee. We met at a cafe 3 blocks from the office. She looked nervous, scanning the room like she expected someone to be listening. You heard it too, I said immediately. She didn't ask what. She just nodded, lips pressed together, so tightly they looked bloodless. What the hell is happening? Anna leaned in. Don't use their mics at night. Don't leave the apps running. Whatever it is, it comes through when no one's supposed to be listening. What it? She shook her head. I don't know, but it's been happening since last year. A handful of us. We've all had the same thing. Breathing. Voices. The calls at night. But if you talk about it too much. She trailed off, her eyes darting toward the window. It gets worse. I felt my stomach drop. How do you know? Because one guy, Dan, he didn't stop. He kept asking, kept recording. He doesn't log in anymore. Nobody talks about him. My skin prickled. Where is he? I don't know. But the look in her eyes said otherwise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I searched for hours, deep dives through forums, obscure subreddits, buried blog posts. Most were junk. But one link led to a paste bin file labeled Zoom call ghost.log. I opened it. It was hundreds of lines of text, timestamps, transcriptions of audio. Every line the same pattern. The timestamps weren't random. They were every night, between 3:05 and 3:20 a.m. And then, at the very bottom, one final entry dated a week ago. Stop reading this. I shut my laptop and shoved it under the bed like a guilty object. My chest ached from the adrenaline hammering my veins. That's when I heard it. 3 soft knocks. On my office door. I live alone. The air drained from my lungs in an instant. Every hair on my body lifted. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. After 30 seconds of nothing, I managed to whisper, "Who's there?" Silence. I edged toward the door, each step brittle with fear. I gripped the handle, waited, yanked it open empty. The office was dark, the blinds drawn. My computer sat on the desk, plugged in. I hadn't plugged it back. The screen glowed faint blue. The mic light was red. And from the speakers came that steady, patient breathing. I told myself I wouldn't record anymore, that I'd delete the files, throw away the microphone, and shut down my computer for good. I thought maybe if I denied it, if I refused to give it power, it would stop. But that's not how this works. You can't unhear something. You can't uninvite it once it's found you. I stopped streaming. I stopped joining voice chats. For a while, I stopped even turning my PC on. But the breathing never went away. At first, I heard it faintly through the walls of my apartment, the same wet, uneven rasp I used to hear over the headset. Then it crept into the quiet moments of my day, when I turned off the shower, when I paused the TV, when I woke in the middle of the night. That sound was there, sometimes slow and steady, sometimes erratic, as though something was crouched just out of sight, panting too close to my ear. The worst part wasn't the noise, it was when it copied me. One night, I was brushing my teeth and I spat into the sink. Over the faint ringing of the bathroom fan, I heard another spit hit porcelain. I froze, foam still on my lips, and leaned down to stare into the sink. Nothing. But then, faintly behind me, I heard breathing that wasn't mine. I couldn't keep pretending. I needed to know what it wanted. I booted up my PC again after nearly a month of silence. The desktop loaded, familiar but alien, like visiting your childhood home after it's been abandoned. My mic, my headset, everything sat where I'd left it. Dust had settled, but as soon as I plugged the mic back in, the red light blinked on like it had been waiting. I opened a recording software. My hands trembled. The plan was simple. Ask it directly. If it was some kind of hallucination, I would at least prove it to myself. If it was real, then maybe it would finally tell me what it wanted. I hit record. For a moment, silence. Just the faint hiss of an empty track. Hello, I asked, my voice cracking. I know you're there. You've been here for weeks. What do you want from me? Nothing. Just quiet static. And then breathing. Slow. Deep. Closer than ever before. So close I instinctively pushed the mic away, even though the sound wasn't coming from my speakers. It was in the room. I swallowed hard. Why me? The recording crackled. The breathing stopped. And for the first time, I heard something else. A voice. At first, it was almost too faint to understand. Just a whisper buried in static. I turned up the gain until the waveform spiked. And then I heard it clearly, because, you listen. I felt my entire body seize up. My stomach dropped. I whispered back, what do you mean? The response came instantly, distorted but unmistakable. Others. Ignore. You. Stay. It wasn't true. I had ignored it for weeks, but the fact was, I'd always come back. That first night when I thought it was a glitch, the hours I spent replaying, analyzing, obsessing, I had listened more than anyone else. I realized, with a crushing weight, that listening was all it needed. I closed the program. I yanked the mic out, but the breathing didn't stop. This time, I heard it through my headset, despite not being connected. The little green light on the earpiece blinked even though it wasn't plugged in. Then, without warning, Discord opened on its own. My cursor moved, not by me. It clicked on a server I hadn't joined. A server with no name, just a black circle as its icon. My username sat alone in the members list. Except no, not alone. There was one more. No name, no profile picture, just an empty space where text should have been. A voice call began ringing. My headset vibrated though the cord still hung loose from the desk. I tried to shut down the PC, but every button froze. The mouse wouldn't move. The call connected on its own. And then I heard it louder than ever. The breathing. Wet. Hungry. Filling the room like something crouched right over my shoulder. Stop! I screamed. Leave me alone. But the whisper came again, drawn out, guttural, like it was climbing up through the wires just to reach me. Don't hang up. That's when I realized the mic wasn't the only thing turned on. My webcam light glowed green. I had disabled it years ago, even taped it over. But now the tape was gone. I don't remember taking it off. On screen, my own face stared back at me, pale and shaking. Behind me, just darkness. Except no, not just darkness. For a single frame, so quick I almost missed it, something shifted. A blur, like a shape ducking just out of the camera's view. The breathing grew frantic, desperate, almost excited. I slammed the laptop shut. The sound didn't stop. My headset, still unplugged, pulsed with each inhale, each exhale. And then, faintly, through the static and the gasps, the voice said, "You've let me in." I don't remember the next few hours clearly. I must have blacked out or lost time. When I woke, the computer was still closed, but the headset was on my head. I swear I hadn't put it on. The audio log was still running. 12 hours long. I don't dare play the whole thing. I only skipped through in fragments. Most of it was breathing, sometimes whispering, sometimes my own voice, even when I wasn't speaking, repeating things I'd never said, pleading, crying, begging. One phrase kept repeating, "Don't stop listening." The last 10 minutes were the worst, because the mic had recorded two distinct sets of breathing. Mine and something else. But here's the part that chills me most. Near the very end, right before the file cuts off, there's a knock. 3 sharp raps. Not from outside. Not from the hallway. From inside the recording itself. Perfectly clear, like someone knocked directly on the microphone. And then, in my own voice, though I swear I never said it, came the words, "I'll stay." It's been 3 days since then. I haven't touched the computer again, but I don't need to, because the breathing isn't tied to the mic anymore. Last night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, too afraid to sleep. And just as I started to drift, I heard it. Not through speakers, not through a headset, directly, in my ear. Slow, heavy, waiting. And when I finally opened my eyes, I wasn't alone. In the dim light, inches from my face, something moved in the dark. Its chest rose and fell, perfectly in sync with the sound. And though I couldn't see its face, I could feel it smiling. Because I had listened. Because I'm still listening. And so are you.